In this section, we are going to cover vCloud Air Gateway Service, Virtual Private Networks. This is really an important section of this course because this is where we get into multi-cloud computing as well as hybrid cloud computing. How do you connect between clouds, both vCloud director-based clouds as well as clouds where their gateways provide basic virtual private network services or VPN services. So the Air Gateway service, the VPN service that we're talking about in this section, really is a site-to-site IPsec VPN service. And Air supports VPN between networks in the same organization, which means that in one organization you have multiple gateways, for example, and we put up a VPN between those two, and that basically allows you to segregate your workloads in two different VDCs, and yet you're able to, based on firewall settings and so on, you're able to actually communicate between those two VDCs, and that's one of the first options that we will actually check. Air also allows us to have networks in different organizations, as well as VPN connections to a remote site. So again, these are site-to-site IPsec based VPNs using standards such as IPsec and the IKE, as well as the phase 1 and the phase 2 connectivity. That is all part of the standard way of setting up site-to-site IPsec VPNs. So really, between not much of a difference between networks in a different organization, which is this part, and VPN to remote site, except that in this case, if you have vCloud Director on both ends in the different organizations, then you are able to log in directly to vCloud Director so that the parameters can be picked up directly and populated in the configuration. Really not different from a VPN to a remote site in the sense, the only difference is that you're not on the other side, you don't have to have vCloud Director, and so, but if you're able to pick up the same parameters as would be picked up automatically, then you still are able to set up a VPN, and we will look at that as well. So I'm going to do it in two parts actually. We are going to first look at the VPN between networks in the same organization. I'm going to whiteboard that and then show you in the lab how that is set up. It's very straightforward to set up. And then I have set up a remote site, which really is a different organization. It happens to be in vCloud Air, but it's in a different country. It's in Germany. So we will set up a VPN between the New Jersey region virtual data center that I have and the data center that I have in Germany in vCloud Air, and that will show you how reasonably simple it is to actually set up VPNs between sites. And because the German organization is a different name, then it really amounts to being the same thing as this VPN. So with that, I am going to switch over to the whiteboard. So we are now going to start whiteboarding the first option in terms of establishing VPNs in the vCloud Air environment. I'm going to use the blue color and sketch it out for you. So this is the Virginia data center that I normally use. This is the Air data center. I have a VDC, a virtual data center 1 in there, and then I have the INE virtual data center 2 that's also in there. There is a gateway here, gateway 2 let's say, and there's a gateway here, gateway 1. This has the IP address, the public IP address 1, and this has the public IP address 2. And what we are going to do is to set up the VPN connectivity here. So we're going to set up the VPN. So this would be the first use case here, where we're saying we're going to set up a VPN between two different virtual data centers in the same organization, because the underlying organization here is basically the same. So this is the first thing that we are going to be looking at, and I am now going to switch over to the lab. So as you can see, I'm back in VMware vCloud Air. We are looking at all the virtual data centers in this organization in the region US Virginia 14. I have two VDCs, and I think the important thing to look at here is the gateway IP. The gateway IP on VDC1 is 23, and this is a 144. And what we are going to do is to connect these two gateways together with the VPN connection. Now, in order to do this, we have to go to vCloud Director, and when I click on that, it'll start downloading the interface, and it'll take us to the edge gateways that are there. Now, of course, it just goes into VDC1, so I'll go to the home and I will click on manage VDCs, and now we see that there are those two VDCs out there, INE VDC2 and VDC1, and they are in the same organization, which is called the INE course organization. INE course organization. Now, at this point in time, it's useful to just click on General and look at the organization URL. This last part, or you can see it up here much better, the 9 Easy Charlie, 2 Easy, 3 Dog Fox, and so on, is the unique UUID of the INE course organization. I gave this human readable name, and that's the UUID. So we are in the same organization, and in this same organization we have, when I click on manage VDCs, we have two VDCs. Okay, so we have the INE course organization. Its UUID starts with a 9 Easy Charlie, and there are two VDCs in there. Let's take a look at INE VDC 2. I open the VDC. I get to the gateway for that VDC. I open the gateway and look at its edge services, and I go to VPN, and as you can see, there are two VPNs currently enabled and in green status. The one I want you to look at this point in time is the very first one. I call it ZZZ because it's really simple to set up. If you recall, the two gateways we saw in this organization, which is the INE course organization, one had a address starting with 23 and the other had an address starting with 144. And so this ZZZ VPN is actually a VPN between those two gateways. Both gateways are within the same organization. The local networks are the 109.1, it's actually a 109.0, that's the gateway IP, and the 110 network. So on one side you have the 109 network, on the other side you have the 110 network, so there is no overlap there, which is always a really good thing in terms of VPNs. So if we examine how easy this was to actually set up, I did not give this a description, give it ZZZ simply because it's so easy to do. And when I did that, it automatically showed me the networks that were available in that VDC from whichever one I was working from, and I selected the default routed network, which is the 109. It gave me the other networks in the VDCs in the organization, and I selected the 110. Okay, the local endpoint is the gateway endpoint. The peer IP again is the IP of the peer gateway. A shared key came up, and I basically just selected the entire shared key and copied it across to the other VDC and set it up. So it was really very simple to set up that VPN. What we can do is we can go through the add now and take a look at how one adds a site-to-site VPN configuration. So we will call it INE VPN because we're not going to enable this, but we'll enable this, and really want to look at the options here. So these are the three options we talked about it when we were whiteboarding this. You want to do a network in this organization, a network in another organization, or a remote network, and we are doing this as it's a network in this organization. Now, when you select network in this organization and leave this drop down like this, what you see is that your peer edge gateway drop down is basically a gateway. So all we're saying is that each VDC has a gateway. We're going to establish the VPN between the two gateways. There is a local network behind each gateway, and on the other side is the peer network behind the other gateway, and that's all it is. So we are on, at this point, INE VDC 2, and in INE VDC 2 these are the local networks that are available. On the other side, in the same organization, and that's how vCloud Directory is able to pick it up. Okay, on the other side is this my routed network. It just happens to be in the other VDC. If I had more, we would see many more of those. Local endpoint automatically are populated. The encryption protocol is automatically populated. A shared key is created, and I then basically say, after selecting one of these networks, I basically say OK, and we are off we go. So it's very straightforward to do, and really that's all. But the point of it is that when you look at these three options, network to network that is in this organization, the local and the peer networks are automatically populated. You just have to select them and basically make sure that the shared key is copied across to the other side, and that's it. Let me show you what happens when I click on a network in another organization. Now things become a little bit different. There's an option that comes up which is actually grayed out in this case, which is log in to a remote vCloud director. So the assumption here is that you are going to connect to another organization that is obviously running in another vCloud director, because the organization construct is a vCloud director construct. So in order to do that, and this is more of a wizard like interface, I have to install the latest version of GRE, and again, because of security reasons I've been reluctant to actually do that. And in essence, this network to another organization is really the same thing as a remote network. Now when you do that, all you have to do is look at your local network, say which of your local networks is going to VPN across to the other side. You put in the peer network for the other side, and you put in your local and peer IDs, which are your IP addresses basically, of the local gateway and the peer gateway, and put in the shared key again by showing key copying and putting it across. So the point here is stated differently, is that this option, which is a remote network, allows you to select local networks only. The reason is it doesn't know what the peer network is, but you can actually, using vCloud Director, go across to that peer network and set up the same parameters on the flip side. So it's the same thing as this network in another organization, except that there is a wizard-like interface that would automatically automatically populate these values of the peer network once you log in to the remote VCD. So not having installed GRE there for security reasons, I did not do this, but I did exactly the same thing to set up a VPN in a remote network by actually going into this VDC, setting up this side of the VPN, and then going across to the German region in a different organization and setting up the VDC on that side after having copied the shared key across. And it's time for me to whiteboard that and show you that as well. But before we do that, we will still take one more look at the ZZZ, which is two networks within the same organization. I will, when you hit edit, basically that's the connection between the 109 and the 110 network. The shared keys there, and everything is pretty straightforward. Now, interestingly enough, when you do this, the peer settings button is grayed out for this kind of a connection, which is between two two networks in the same organization. However, when I look at this, which is between two networks to a different organization, the peer settings button is available, and it tells me that I need to use these settings to configure the peer end of this site-to-site VPN, which is obviously a very useful feature, although it's not difficult to do, but again, it is a useful feature. Because on the remote side, there is no automatic wizard through VCD that is allowing me to do that. In this case, everything is running within vCloud Director and in the same VAir organization, so everything is easily accessible using wizard-like techniques. So setting up VPNs and the wizards and the automatic population of the various configuration items is a really beneficial aspect of VMware Air. So with that, we are going to go back to the whiteboard and take a look at setting up a VPN connection to a remote network between organizations. So one organization in this case will be New Jersey, the other organization will be in Germany. They both happen to be running vCloud directors, but that's not really relevant because the configuration is not automated. It was done manually, which means that on the other side in Germany, for example, or actually on either side, you could have had any other VPN capable network device, either in hardware and software, and as long as you understood what the configuration needs to be for phase 1 IKE, Internet Key Exchange, and the various options for phase 2, then as long as they are the same, then the VPN connection would be set up. So in the end, one can always resort back to raw basic site-to-site IPsec VPN setup in order to have this connectivity happen. So we are now going to switch to the whiteboard. So we are now back at the whiteboard, and we are going to pick up some ink and draw out for you the VPN between sites. And the way I'm going to sketch it out is this. So within my vCloud Air, this is all vCloud Air, I'm using vCloud has many more regions. These are called regions. So I'm using Virginia and one of the regions in Germany, and in there I have organizations. So the org in Virginia is called or has been named INE course organization. In Germany, the organization has been named INE Germany org, and I will show this to you in both vCloud Air and in vCloud Director. The UUID in Virginia for the INE course organization starts with 9 Easy Charlie, 2 Easy, 3 Dog Fox, and so on. And the INE Germany organization starts with 7191 Baker Charlie 38 dash 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 dash. So the UUIDs are different, so these are two different organizations. They just happen to be in vCloud Director. We will set this up manually. So the point here is that these are two separate gateway devices, albeit by the same company, between which we are setting up a pretty standard site-to-site IPsec VPN. Now the gateway address in Virginia is, I have two data centers there, but in the INE VDC 2, the IP address is 144.2.43.185, and the gateway address in Germany is 92.246.246.233, and I will show this to you again when we are back in the lab to show this to you live. And really what I'm doing now is different color for this. I have already actually set up the VPN here. So the VPN basically connects two separate regions, two separate organizations, two separate gateways. Now, what networks are we connecting here? And this is where in Germany, so you have a local net. So if you're looking at it from the viewpoint of INE VDC2, that becomes local net. The local net is 192.168. Pretty sure it is 109.10, 109.0/24. And on this side, again, if you are in this VDC here in this organization, it becomes local, otherwise it becomes peer. So why don't I just call it local peer network, right? And on this side it is 192.168.111.0/24. Okay, so this is local / peer, depending on whether you're here or whether you're here, and the gateways are, one starts with a 144 address, the other has basically the 92 address, and that's how you set up VPN between two sites. And of course, this is the most general case here, because once you understand how this works and you understand the various parameters for phase 1 and phase 2, those are actually documented in the various administration guides. So I would recommend to Google for vCloud Director administration guides, and from there you will be able to see what the phase 1 and phase 2 configurations need to be in your device in order to connect to a site that is running vCloud Director. So this is very important to do if you're working outside the vCloud Director environment. Like I said, the either end, the endpoints. Let's clear it and start again. Let's look at the various endpoints that are now possible. Of course, endpoints VPN. We can have basically hardware-based devices. You can have software-based devices. So you can have Cisco routers, hardware, other routers supporting VPN. The kind of VPN we are looking at is basically a site-to-site IPsec VPN, also known as policy-based VPN. So you could Google this on INE and check out how to set up VPNs. But basically, there's a phase 1 and a phase 2 configuration. Involves things like ISA KMP configurations, etc. on the Cisco side. You could also have firewalls. Cisco firewalls, for example, would be ASA firewalls. You could have other firewalls, checkpoint firewalls as well. You can have basically other VPN devices, or you could have software devices, which could be like a Cisco 1000 vCSR, the cloud services router, which is a software device. You obviously have in the vCloud Air, you have the Edge gateway. Comes in two flavors. One is non-NSX, one is NSX. The NSX one is the one you get when you select advanced networking in vCloud Air. The Edge Gateway gives you some really neat dynamic routing as well if you need it. It's not available on the on-demand, but there it supports IS, it supports BGP, and supports OSPF routing as well. The non-NSX Edge does not support dynamic routing, only static routing, and you might have seen that tab, which we are not going to spend any time on really in this course. It's really unnecessary right now for us, for our purposes. Static routing is available there, and it's a little bit less functional than the NSX Advanced Networking Edge Gateway. But again, the point is that either side can be or both hardware based, or either side can be one or both software based, and you can have all kinds of software based devices. I just put in some Cisco and a VMware device, but certainly it can be anything else. So with that, we are going to go into the lab and take a look at the actual configuration that I've set up to have the VPN running between two different organizations that we showed earlier, one based in Virginia, USA, and the other one based in Germany. So with that, I will pause and restart back at the vCloud Air interface. So I'm back at the vCloud Director interface because VPNs can only be managed from there. And as you can see, I'm in the German region where I have set up a virtual data center which is called VDC1. There's a gateway there. Let's click on that to see the gateway that's there. It has an address starting with 92.246.246.233. Let's go into the vCloud Director interface for that, and it is loading at this point in time. And remember, we are now connecting to Germany across the Atlantic Ocean, so give it a couple of seconds to start up. So here we are in the Germany organization, INE Germany org, and we are looking at the Edge Gateway. We are now at the VPN tab for that gateway, and as you can see, I have a VPN which says to New Jersey. The local endpoint is the public IP address of the local German gateway. The peer endpoint is the New Jersey public IP of the gateway, and it's up and running. The local network here is 192.168.111. I think I said 110 before, but so it's 111 in Germany, and it's talking to the peer network on the other side in New Jersey, which is 192.168.109.0, which is the very first one that was actually created because of the 109 octet. So it's actually very straightforward. Let me just go through it one more time. We are looking at Germany, so the local endpoint is the local public IP address of the local German gateway. The peer endpoint is in New Jersey because that's the other end of the VPN, and its public IP address of that gateway is 144.243.185. The local network is the local German network that is behind the gateway, and it has the private addresses set up there as 192.168.111.0/24 network. And since we are in Germany, that is a local network. The peer network is in New Jersey, and there that network is 192.168.109.0/24 as it says here. So it's very straightforward and intuitive. Local endpoint, peer endpoints basically being the public IP addresses, the local and peer networks being the networks that are behind the gateway devices on either side. Local or peer depends on where you are. If you're in Germany, then local is the German network and the German endpoint. If you were in New Jersey, it will be the opposite. So let me select this, and the peer settings is ungrayed, and I look at this, and what it is now telling me is exactly the same thing. It says use these settings to configure the peer of this site-to-site VPN. So when I go, what it's telling me is that this is the configuration, including this key that you need to put in the configuration on the other side. Right now, in this case, it is expecting the local network in New Jersey to be 192.168.109.0, which is correct. So it's kind of flipped everything. The local endpoint now becomes the New Jersey endpoint, not the German endpoint, and the peer endpoint becomes the German endpoint, not the New Jersey viewpoint, because it is the VPN peer settings. Now, essentially using this, as long as your phase 1 and phase 2 the options for Diffie-Hellman as well as encryption and so on are all set up the same way. You can actually connect pretty easily to any other hardware or software gateway. It does not have to be a vCloud director based edge gateway device. So that's really all there is to VPNs. In terms of what is capable. I mean, it's obviously very powerful, it's obviously very easy to set up, and most importantly, it's all standard site-to-site IPsec VPN. As long as you understand how to do that, you will be able to set this up. There are some wizards that are available in vCloud Air. There's a little bit more functionality. Well, actually, I take that back, because in vCloud Air, you actually have to go into vCloud Director interface in order to be able to do VPNs. But once you're there, there is a wizard available there. But really, as long as you know how to connect VPNs together, it's really very straightforward, because you're always connecting to a remote network in one sense or the other. Logically, it might be the same organization, different organization, same location, different organization. It doesn't really matter. In the end, there is the local site and there is the peer site. The peer site may be local or the peer site may be remote. It's all the same. So with that, we are going to end the section on virtual private networks and move on to the last portion, which is load balancing. The load balancing option that is here in this tab, available with the gateway. We are not going to cover static routing very much, except to say that static routes obviously allow traffic between networks, and you have to ensure the firewall rules are configured appropriately. You all know from you're all network professionals, so from that perspective, you understand when you would need static routing. It's simple to set up, so might as well just, while I'm here, I might as well do this. It doesn't warrant a separate section. Enable static routing, add, and same thing, it tells you all the networks that are there available in that, and you give it a name and you give it the network address and the next hop IP. So essentially exactly the same thing as we always do in networking. So very simple to set up static routes if they are necessary.